Welcome to the heart of an empire built on blood, the Roman Colosseum. Here, men didn't just fight to the death for survival, they fought for politics. Because in ancient Rome, every single drop of blood spilled in the arena served one crucial purpose: to keep the emperor in power. This is the story of how Rome's greatest rulers turned death into a political weapon and used blood to rule the world. Long before the Colosseum dominated the skyline, during the Roman Republic, gladiatorial games were something entirely different. They were sacred, respectful, and rare rituals meant to honor the dead at funerals. But as the Republic expanded, its appetite for spectacle grew along with it. And then came a man who understood the power of a crowd better than anyone: Julius Caesar. He grasped a fundamental truth of human nature. If the people are entertained, they are less likely to rebel. So Caesar began to sponsor lavish, unforgettable gladiator games. He didn't just put on a show, he fed the poor and showered the masses with blood and bread. He poured his personal fortune into winning their affection, and it was a brilliant investment. While the senators in the Curia whispered about his ambition and feared his rise, the common people of Rome chanted his name in the streets. Every fight became a campaign speech. Every cheer was a vote for Caesar. By the time he famously crossed the Rubicon and marched on Rome, the people didn't see a traitor or a rebel. They saw their champion, the man who had given them the greatest shows on earth. When the Republic finally fell and the empire rose from its ashes, the first emperor, Augustus, took Caesar's playbook and perfected it. He transformed the games from private displays of wealth into a state-sponsored performance of imperial power. Now, gladiators fought not for the glory of some wealthy patron, but for the glory of Rome itself, and by extension, the emperor. Augustus used the arena as a stage to broadcast his message. He showed that Rome was united, powerful, and when he chose, merciful. And he, the emperor, was the source of it all. He hosted grand games to celebrate his military victories, dedicating them to the gods, but the underlying political message was unmistakable. Obey me, and you will live in peace and prosperity. This was the birth of panem et circenses, bread and circuses. It became the empire's unspoken law: keep the people fed, keep them entertained, and they will never notice the chains of autocracy tightening around them. The games distracted the populace from political realities, from lost freedoms, and from the immense concentration of power in one man's hands. Of course, these games weren't cheap, but for the emperors, they were worth every single coin. Each ruler treated the arena as a critical political investment. Specialized gladiator schools, known as ludi, trained thousands of fighters, from condemned criminals to prisoners of war and even volunteers seeking fame. An entire economy sprang up around the spectacles. Merchants sold weapons, armor, and even refreshments to the massive crowds. Ambitious senators tried to outspend one another on their own smaller games to gain favor with the public and the emperor. And the emperors? They poured millions upon millions of sesterces into providing free games for the people. They financed the capture and importation of exotic beasts from the farthest corners of the empire: lions from Africa, tigers from the east, bears from Germania. They constructed monumental arenas like the Colosseum itself, because they knew that every roar of the crowd, every gasp of shock, and every drop of blood spilled on the sand bought them loyalty. The games were far more than just sport. They were a form of public theater, meticulously designed to remind every Roman citizen of a simple, terrifying fact: your emperor rules over life and death. But absolute power often leads to absolute madness. Some emperors took that control too far, twisting the games into a reflection of their own deranged egos. The Emperor Caligula, for instance, reportedly used the games to indulge his cruelest whims, executing senators and commoners alike for his own twisted entertainment. And then there was Nero, an emperor obsessed with being adored. He craved the love of the crowd so desperately that he blurred the line between ruler and performer. He stepped into the arena himself, not as a warrior, but as a singer, a poet, and a charioteer. He wanted the crowd's applause so badly that he forced them to watch his performances for hours. When riots broke out after a rigged chariot race, Nero's response wasn't negotiation. It was terror. He punished thousands, making it brutally clear, "You will cheer for your emperor or you will die in his show." For mad emperors like these, the arena became a distorted mirror, reflecting their own deep-seated fear and vanity more than the glory of Rome. And yet, the people kept coming. They packed the stands day after day, because by this point, Rome had cultivated an addiction to death, to noise, and to the thrilling distraction from their own lives. But every investment eventually comes with a price. By the 3rd century AD, the Roman Empire was bleeding, not from the swords of its enemies, but from within. The imperial treasury, once thought to be limitless, was being drained by constant wars on its borders and the ceaseless demand for extravagant games at home. New emperors found they could no longer afford the grand spectacles of their predecessors. The legendary hunts with hundreds of exotic animals became a thing of the past. The massive, week-long festivals grew shorter and less frequent. Slowly but surely, the arenas grew quieter. The crowds, once numbering in the tens of thousands, began to shrink. And as the empire's economic and military power waned, a new force was rising: Christianity. This new faith saw the gladiatorial games not as an honorable tradition or a political tool, but as what they truly were: cold-blooded murder. Christian writers condemned the spectacle, and as their influence grew, public opinion began to turn against the bloody contests. Finally, in the year 404 AD, the Emperor Honorius officially banned gladiatorial games for good. Rome had spent centuries feeding on its own blood, using death as a tool to maintain order. For centuries, emperors had bought peace with violence. They turned blood into loyalty and fear into power. But in the end, the very empire that had ruled the world through spectacle was undone by the silence that followed. Because when the games finally ended, so did Rome's grand illusion of control. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this journey into Rome's dark history fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories from the ancient world. See you next time.